What is going on, everybody, and welcome to take 2 of episode 3 of Love and Marriage podcast that Leslie and I started a few weeks back as an encouragement to married couples, young and old, years long or short of years. We started this because, I just really felt that we could take what we've experienced in 25 years of marriage and be an encouragement to others. And I hope that's been the case. We've gotten some great feedback. The number of views has just been amazing. It's certainly encouraging to me, and I'm so thankful for everybody's support in this process. By the coffee, you can probably tell it's pretty early in the morning. It is 6 a.m. On Tuesday morning, the 28th of March, and so we're trying to get this pushed out today. We tried last night, take number 1 on Monday night, but I just didn't like the format, didn't like what we were doing.
I thought it was great.
Well, I'm glad you did. Anyways, I've been up since 2:30 in the morning. My mind's been racing, and one of the things that it's been racing about is the fact that I didn't like last night. So that's why we're redoing it today.
It's okay.
Anyways, we got a few questions to get to today. It's hopefully it'll flow, in my opinion, at least smoother than it did last night. But the first thing we want to address is what are some of the pitfalls in marriage, and we're going to start there because hopefully when we answer the last two, it'll help maybe avoid some of the first things that we're going to be talking about in the pitfalls of marriage. And so what are some of the pitfalls of marriage? And I think I think your responses to this were pretty much spot on, if you want to kind of share what they are.
Okay. So the first pitfall of marriage that I talked about is that there's a really high chance of getting into a rut or a very stagnant routine where it ends up like you're just roommates going through life together rather than a husband and a wife who are growing in the marriage that God has put them in. And I think one of the reasons why people get into a rut is lack of communication, which, is one of the biggest pitfalls. To be honest, if you stop communicating with each other, things just start heading downhill really quickly.
They certainly do, and going back to your point of just like routine, many things in life are routine, right? We know, you got to get up, you got to get ready for work, you got to get the kids, you got to get them to school, you got to pick them up, you got to cook dinner. I mean, obviously there's routines in everything that we do, but I think in the routines of life, especially in marriage, complacency sometimes kicks in, and you begin to forget that a marriage, I think, constantly needs to be fed, like spiritually, right? Emotionally, mentally, and physically. And those are all things that in the midst of like ruts and routines, I think get pushed to the wayside because you're just in the routine. Right. You're going in the season. Exactly. And so, be very careful of that pitfall of routine and maybe complacency that come because, if you're not communicating, as you were saying a moment ago, your needs in the marriage, because you're just caught in the routine, those needs are not going to be met. They're not going to be fulfilled. And that's going to go down paths that you had no intention of them ever going down. I think another pitfall of marriage as well is lack of intimacy. It's so important for a husband and for a wife to come together routinely. And whatever routinely is in your marriage, you have to define that. You do that by communicating with one another. Some people's routines of intimacy or plans of intimacy are different than others. The needs are different than others. And so you have to have that conversation with your spouse about those needs, but you've got to come together intimately, because the pitfall of not doing that is extremely dangerous. Especially with the ease of access to things like pornography, that are an easy go-to when you are frustrated sexually or physically, and it really is just a wile of the devil to trick a husband or to trick a wife into feeding the flesh. the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life. And so it's so important to come together physically and intimately as often as is agreed upon, and really prevent that pitfall of falling into pornography or into maybe a relationship in a work environment or wherever that is growing into something that is going to be dangerous and borderline adulterous. And so I think it's just important for that to happen. So agree?
Agreed. It brings me to another one that you brought up in the first round, which was trust between husband and a wife. And if there's no trust, the marriage falls apart pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the fact that we have each other's cell phone PIN numbers, and there's no secrets. I mean, you can go pick up my phone anytime. There's nothing there.
Correct.
Except for boring work emails that would put you to sleep. But, having that open line of trust with each other is really key.
It is. And with that trust, too, I think maybe another pitfall, maybe for younger couples, younger married couples, jealousy.
Yeah.
I remember just a season, when we were dating and then married, and I for not because of anything you did to me, but just in my own lack of trust of myself, I had moments of jealousy, and I didn't know coworkers, I didn't know this, that, or the other, and so that can lead down a spiral that you don't want to go down. But a lot of pitfalls in marriage. Communicate, folks. Trust in one another. As you were saying, I've got her cell phone password, she's got mine, and that really builds trust, I think, in a relationship. Because there should be no secrets. You shouldn't be hiding anything, from your wife that she may need to know about, right? So with that being said, as we go into these next couple of questions, hopefully what we talk about can help avoid some of those pitfalls that we just got done speaking of. And the first question is this: what do we as husbands and wives individually need to focus on in order to carry out God's plan for our marriage? And I'll let you carry it away first.
Okay. So I really strongly believe that both individual relationships from the husband and the wife need to be strong with the Lord.
Yes.
Individually. God needs to be first in my life.
Yes.
God needs to be first in your life.
Yes.
In order for us to come together and we can carry out God's plan for our marriage.
Correct.
If that's not the case, you can make it work.
Fake it till you make it, right?
But it's not as easy, and it makes life challenging, especially if one spouse is on that right path and the other one is deviating.
Yeah.
It causes a little bit of a fracture.
Which obviously, and we've spoken about this, that we've had seasons in our marriage where that's been the case. Yeah. Where one is really seeking the Lord and pursuing the Lord and His will, and maybe the God's plan for the wife and marriage is being fulfilled, but but the husband's isn't, right?
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. When my walk with the Lord is exactly where it needs to be, when I'm in the center of God's will, when I'm pursuing Him diligently every morning in prayer and in reading of His Word, God's plan for our marriage just seems to be firing on all cylinders. And don't get me wrong, I mean, of course, even when we are doing that, and we're both sort of doing what we need to do as far as our individual relationships with the Lord, there's still little quarrels and spats and hiccups in our day and whatever the case is, but God's plan for our marriage, I think, is exactly where it needs to be. At least I would testify, as of right now this morning.
Yep.
It's exactly where it needs to be. I truly believe that our marriage is right in the center of God's will, and that is due in part to our individual relationship with the Lord. And we had gone and seen the Jesus Revolution movie a few weeks back, and do you want to share one of the quotes quotes that we liked from it.
Yeah, the character that played Greg Laurie in the movie turned to his then girlfriend and said to her, "If you get between me and God, this is over."
Right.
And we both kind of looked at each other and giggled because he was trying to be silly, I think, but it's so true. It's so true. If something comes between me and God, that's got to go.
Right. So yeah, a marriage should never come between my individual relationship with the Lord, right? And our marriage should never come in between your individual relationship with the Lord, right? They should all work in perfect union and harmony, right? God, where he needs to be at the top, and the husband and wife where they need to be in their respectful places as well. So that's what you need to focus on individually, is just your walk with the Lord, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're both doing it, man, God's plan for your marriage is just going to grow and get better and better. The final question for this particular episode is this: what are things we can do together proactively on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis to strengthen our bond and glorify God to the fullest extent? I'll tackle the daily. Let's maybe take the daily, monthly, or weekly, monthly. I'll tackle the daily first. Really to strengthen our bond as husband and wife, to glorify God in our marriage. I think the most important and yet simplest thing to do is pray with one another. Mm-hmm. Prayer is just so vitally important in a marriage and in a relationship, not only individually, we just got done talking about individual things, right? But also together, man, just spending time with your spouse in prayer. And Leslie and I choose to do this in the morning time. She's super busy. She is usually out the door at 6:30 in the morning. And so before she leaves, we've kind of vowed to one another and committed to one another to make sure that we just sit and pray for a few moments and just ask for the Lord's protection and provision over our marriage, our children, our home, etc. You've got to pray daily with one another. What else?
That's a pretty good daily one. I mean,
what about saying I love you?
Oh yeah. You got to make sure that's important. But that kind of goes along with our prayers. When we're done, we say, I love you, and then we get the door. But yeah, making sure that you say those words, even when you don't like each other. There are days that
you don't like me, but you still love me.
I love you, but I don't necessarily like things that you've done.
Sure.
Especially over the not recently, but I'm talking about in the past 25 years. There have definitely been days.
Right.
And there were days that I didn't say it, and I regret that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important thing, especially for the young married people, to start putting that into their lives early on. You
know what we did too, and sometimes we don't do it, but we try to as best as we can. Like, we never leave each other's presence. Like she going to work or me leaving, or whatever the case is, without just kissing each other goodbye. And so many stories have been told about, I wish I would have said something, or I wish I would have said I love you. I wish I would have kissed you goodbye, and something tragic happens, and like that regret is just with people for the rest of their lives. And so we really try to focus on kissing each other goodbye before we leave,
even when we're sick. Air kisses.
Yeah, air kisses. We don't. Yeah. But and then of course saying I love you. What about weekly? What can we do weekly?
I would highly recommend to married couples that they go to church together.
That's
and
super
again,
important.
For you and I, that's kind of a given. We're here in our house,
I pastor a church.
It kind of happens that way.
We have to show up.
I'll be honest with you, we don't really spend church time together most times,
we
because
don't sit together
I'm running
anymore.
with children and you're preaching, and even when I'm able to sit in the service, we're not really together because, again,
right,
you're teaching and I'm sitting.
Right.
But I remember many years of our marriage where we would go to church together, and I look back on that time fondly because we would be able to sit together and go through God's word together, and it was a good time.
Yeah, having just an open Bible with your spouse and just worshiping together and being sitting next to each other when God is feeding you His word. That's really important to do on a weekly basis. Also, man, I think like a weekly date night is super important as well. Pick a day or pick an evening time. Maybe those of you with kids, maybe it's after the kids go to bed. You said something last night that really struck a chord. It's like you don't have to spend money to do a date night, right? And especially those that might have younger kids and don't have access to like a built-in babysitter that we're fortunate enough to have. Maybe you plan something after the kids go to bed. Maybe it's just a candlelit dinner. When the kids are down, or maybe it's a movie or whatever it is, but make sure you spend quality time with one another, not just time in front of a TV in each other's presence, but time focused on one another with the TV off, enjoying each other's company and, talking, communicating, dining, whatever that looks like. I think that's something that's super important to do on a weekly basis and really...
or at least monthly, which is the next one.
Well, at the very least monthly, if not, maybe bi-weekly, if Lord willing you have that ability to do it. But, monthly, plan a night out, plan a dinner out, plan dinner and a movie, whatever it is you can do daily, weekly, monthly, that really is focused on your relationship with your husband or with your wife. Again, it doesn't need to be anything big. It doesn't need to be anything significant. It doesn't need to cost a lot of money, no money at all. Whatever it is that you can do, small or big, do it. That will draw you closer to your wife. Bring home a surprise, flowers, food, dinner, a card, whatever. I will say this about flowers. I don't do flowers. Okay. First of all, flowers die, and I don't like that. So, second of all, so for the last two Valentine's Days, 2022 and 2023, I ordered flowers for my wife to be sent to her work. Last year, they did not arrive until the day after Valentine's Day.
2 days. I think it was 2 days.
And I was so fired up and angry. And this year, listen, let me tell you something. I spent a pretty penny on flowers this year. And they were stunning and they were beautiful. And you know what? They didn't show up until a week later, I think. And so I vowed to never buy you flowers again as a result, because they're just doomed. I believe that buying flowers for you
just go to the store
anyways
and pick them up.
Anyways, again, whatever it is, how significant or insignificant it is, if you truly love one another, I think the realization of the gift, no matter what it is, of time and of commitment, should be recognized on both ends when it comes to just strengthening your bond and really glorifying God. And that's what it's all about. Showing your spouse that you love them, being committed to them. That glorifies God, right? Because God made marriage. It is a holy matrimony. And glorifying God is loving your spouse the way that the scriptures tell us to, and when you do that, it's just gonna, again, God's plan for our marriage is fulfilled, and God gets the glory in the end, and that's really what it's all about. So, with that being said, any final words, final thoughts before we close it out? No?
We're good today.
We are good today. I like round 2 more than I liked round 1. That's just for me personally. Hey, listen, just a couple of things. We have enough questions, I think, for one more episode of Love and Marriage, which will be episode number 4. However, I will not close the door on it. If you guys have any more questions you want answered, or anything you want us to go over when it comes to marriage, please submit your questions through our website, www.revchurch.com. revchurchcv.com. Scroll all the way to the bottom. You can email me your questions, or you can just submit them through the website, or email them directly to Leslie, Leslie at revchurchcv.com, or to me, Solomon, Solomon at revchurchcv.com. Thank you so much for the continued support of this podcast, and just for being an encouragement to us as we submit this and do this. I pray that you all have a blessed day. I'm Solomon Stewart. That's Leslie Stewart. This is Love and Marriage. Have a great day. Bye.